Okay, game influenced by enemy depth. What does that mean? So, game influence is going to be, well, frankly, what are you doing to influence the game? But we can look at it respective to what line in the enemy's wall of battle, maybe you can look at it, that you're actually going into. So backline, the backest of the backline is going to be a carrier. So potentially that's like carrier sniping, maybe. Also backline, it's going to be battleships. Also backline are going to be kiting cruisers, like Hindenburgs and stuff. Midline. Midline's going to be more, put this down here. Midline's going to be more consumable cruisers, and to an extent, some battleships. So we can sit battleships there as well, and we're going to have consumable cruisers. Also, you could have gunboat DDs. And then for the front line are going to be consumable cruisers. You're going to have destroyers in general. And I guess you could technically also have like maybe a fourth concept, which is like a flank. I don't know. For consistency, we call it flank line, which is probably going to be like torp DDs and flanking cruisers. So the question comes in, if you're looking at this from a CV's perspective, what are you doing and how are you making it work? So we have a map here, but this isn't the bottom of the map. We're trying to look at a map like as though it was larger. Here we've got some caps. So in the beginning of the match, if you have the enemies spawning up in the north and you spawning in the south, you have a game influence line down the center. Effectively, you own half the map, they own half the map. Theoretically, this frontline stuff, they could come over to the A and the B cap, or A and the C cap. You could have a DD that kind of contests Bravo, but there's going to be an enemy frontline that's going to exist with some destroyers, with consumable cruisers, maybe like a radar Des Moines using an island, or a Worcester firing over an island, which technically it's a consumable cruiser in that it's got radar, it's got some kind of supportive elements, and it's going to be wanting some kind of cover aspect to it. You might have an Alaska that's up here or something. You'll have cruisers that will embed themselves near the front line to be able to protect the front line while it's doing whatever the hell it's doing. Midline, you may have some consumable cruisers out further. Maybe you've got something that's in a smoke screen, like a Smolensk, or a Minotaur. Minotaur could be placed up further to the front line. It could also be midline. It doesn't have range to go forever, but it has enough range that it could open water if it wanted to. There also might be some open water cruisers like a Stalingrad. Could pick a position where it's generally safe, able to kind of bow in, or a Moskva, something that can find itself able to be in an open water while doing what it needs to do without getting dead. Kiting cruisers. You might have a Hindenburg or something back here that's just kind of spinning around, juking, going up, down, sideways, and all sorts of stuff while it's showering damage at 20-something clicks. Also, of course, you're going to have battleships. You can have battleships that are just kind of hanging out. You're going to have battleships that are sailing stupidly broadside. You're going to have battleships way in the back of the map that are enjoying Deadeye until it gets removed. And then, of course, you'll have a carrier all the way on the edge of the map. The first thing they do can just reverse all the way to the side of the map so they can play nice and scared. Whatever. This is just kind of a general assortment of where stuff can be. So if you're in a carrier, you're going to have some carriers that are going to be great at dealing with the backline, like the FDR. FBR. You're going to have some carriers which are great at dealing with the front line in the sense of being the midway, because the midway can threaten with bombs. Obviously, there's rockets on many different carriers, and that's going to give you some frontline threat. But when you're exerting influence, each of these lines has the capability of being broken. If there's no midline, if the midline is destroyed, well, then the front line has no support. And if your team's front line has support, then your team's front line overwhelms their front line using their midline cruisers to come in and help and assist. So they overwhelm, bully, kill shit, and take map positioning. So something that might be good against the midline, for instance, might be an MVR, the Richthofen, in that the Richthofen has the ability, if there's a Stalingrad, that they can come in and they can AP rocket the shit out of the Stalingrad, or they have very accurate torpedoes. They could bully it that way. Maybe the bombs kind of suck, but because they can drive off this backline or nail somebody that's hiding to force them back, you start to expose the enemy front line to something that can be overtaken. So it's worth considering, what are you doing and how is it affecting your team's ability to overcome something? So if they have an installed backline over here with like 1 or 2 battleships, you can't really push that in the same way if the battleship's driven off. If the FDR comes over and starts bashing the crap out of the battleships, well, your cruisers can move up because the battleships aren't threatening them. And I mean, they're dead or they're gone or they've left. As long as the battleships on the other side of the map don't have range, then these cruisers come up and this destroyer has to bail. This cruiser is suddenly under threat of being overrun. You know, so this has the ability to break a flank. But if you kill their battleships and they kill your DDs, how do they push? That becomes an awkward situation. Then you're having to start to push your like battleships into DDs or push your battleships into emplaced positions. Like, it starts getting awkward, and it's worth looking at like, what is the relative parity of their back, their mid, their front, and what are you doing to alter it and affect it in a way that's going to help your team?